No, he had that battle with Sonny.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Your best behavior.
What's that hanging thing?
Presents the headlines, the stories. Mics are going up. Good morning, Lagos. This is Smooth Breakfast here with Valentine.
And Ayo.
And we are in Freshly Pressed the Hour, the time for Freshly Pressed 981. And we have with us our guest analyst as we dive into today's news stories, analyzing and taking them apart. Of course, with your contributions, as you can do so, we'll tell you the numbers to send your messages to very shortly. But before then, I'd like to introduce our guest for today. We have Fred Allison with us. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Lagos.
Fred is at Mr. FB Allison on Twitter, so you can tweet directly at him as well. Then we also have Justin Ijeh. Good morning, Justin.
Morning, people.
Justin is at Justin Ijeh on Twitter. You can also tweet at him, and they tweet throughout the day with regards to issues around Nigeria, frequently. On today's show, you can send your messages on WhatsApp.
Yes, our WhatsApp number is 08094440981, and that is 08094440981. On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Please add this hashtag to your messages so we can see them. The hashtag is freshlypressed981. With our first story here before us, Punch newspaper has this report. Justin, it says, Oyo government summons site engineer over Ibadan building collapse. So in the face of the collapsed buildings, especially the particular one that fell at the Shogoye area of Ijeh in Ibadan, a collapse from Friday, March 15th, the government of Oyo State, especially the Oyo State Bureau of Physical Planning and Development Control, speaking through the Director General Wahid Badamosi, disclosed that the government is going to take steps first to make sure that they call the engineer to question, because according to the story, said they make the engineers sign on undertaking that are going to follow due process in setting up these buildings. And there's some details that are really interesting, like the current period for buildings, allowing the decking to set in 3 weeks. But it seems as if many of these things are flouted. Your thoughts on this?
Well, it's almost as if the elections ushered us into a season of, into the dark side.
Thank you.
There have been
too
many of these incidents.
Worrying stories.
Yeah, worrying stories. This is another one. We're getting over we're still dealing with the Lagos situation, and then you hear this Ibadan instance, and then there's another one in Lagos that's been argued about now, whether it's actually a collapse or a demolition.
Right.
But to the substance of the story, what Mr. Badamosi, who is the DG of Oyo State Bureau of Physical Planning, is trying to say here is that, hey, listen, this is all the project engineers' fault. Okay, and he's correct about the 21 days curing period for cast concrete. Yes. I do a bit of construction, so I know about these things. So the question this raises to one's mind, whenever you hear of this building collapses, is it the cement, is it the steel, or is it the process? Right now, if you read his story, I find some dark humor in the way he talks about it. Okay, he says that because they didn't allow those 3 weeks, which is the 21 days, to lapse, I think they were in a hurry to complete the building. I am sure by the time they were putting more loads on it, definitely it will come down, he said. He stressed that the site engineer was not professional enough to advise his clients to allow compliance with due process. According to him, it is like you're putting too much load on your head. Your neck will just crack and you will go down.
I like that analogy, because what clearer way to
illustrate
what could happen.
Well, here's the catch for me. Now, you're threatening to report the guy to coroner, the site engineer.
Okay.
Your agency, Mr. Badamosi, actually has an oversight responsibility. At what point do you exercise this oversight? When there's been a collapse? Because at the tail end of the story, he's saying, we have introduced a new system which directs you to return to us when you complete your building. we will come and examine whether you are worthy of being given a certificate of completion. And here's a kicker for me. You will pay a token, like 25,000 to get the certificate. If you are not given the certificate, it means the building is not worthy of being inhabited by individuals, not even goats, he said.
Right.
And I'm saying, why don't you have a visiting supervisor while construction is ongoing, who you can segment your area of coverage into quarters or whatever and designate X number of projects to a supervisor whose job is to go there and make sure what needs to be done is actually being done.
And probably set up a step-by-step process of accreditation or verification.
Of verification, that's what control and oversight means. Not you sit in your office and wait for me to finish, and then if everything went right, you collect 25,000 naira and give me a certificate. I don't get it.
What stops somebody who probably has a shady intention to pay more than that just to influence
And get the certificate anyway.
an officer to issue a certificate just like that?
We know how this thing is.
So I don't bother leaving your office and just come and check. I mean, it's just something we're exploring.
It's
because we know how
abdication
this
of responsibility by government agency, and this guy
I'm
is
glad
the
you
poster
mentioned
boy
that.
for it.
I'm glad you mentioned Justin, because sometimes we think the government is just there to, wield a big stick when you've done wrong. Actually, they're there to protect the interests of the people. So the reason why it should be every step of the way is so that a man has not spent so much money and at the end of the day finds out that he has wasted his money. So the government is also there to protect interests.
Exactly.
Also, I think landowners, or rather developers and building owners should be held accountable as well, because we know that some people are such in a hurry to set up buildings.
Yeah,
so you
but
find buildings springing up in less than 3 months, less than 6
That's
months.
shady territory because I'm a developer.
Yes,
I have hired
that's why I said some.
I have hired someone, right? And he's supposed to be a professor. I know nothing about building. I just have money and I want to build.
Okay.
Now, you are regulated as the site engineer, project engineer, whatever it is, the civil engineer. If you go to site and do things that are against the standard operating procedures of that industry,
Yeah.
I have vicarious responsibility anyway. But if you took me to court, I'll probably be able to argue my way out of it. I don't know anything about molding blocks now. This guy is a guy who said he knows. I paid him money to do it.
And he assured me.
And he assured me he would, so yeah, that's neither here nor there.
All right, thank you, Justin. Let's move on to this next story now from the Telegraph. Court okays dismissal of 3 policemen sacked for receiving $5,000 bribe. I'll stick with you, Justin, to analyze this story. So the National Industrial Court, Abuja, on Monday affirmed the dismissal of 3 policemen who were sacked for receiving $5,000 as bribe. When I go through the details of the story, it seems as if the officers, went scot-free, but that's not what the headline reads. But take us through the story, Justin.
Okay, so background to the story is these guys were arrested by the police at some point in the past, allegedly for taking this 5,000 naira bribe. They were taken to court, they were held in custody, and they were charged to court on the allegation of bribe collection, and the court found them not guilty. So the guys turn around, hire a lawyer, and come back to court to say we were wrongfully dismissed and we would like a cool 500 million naira in damages for the inconveniences. I like the way that they related the $5,000. They kept it with 5. 5 is the number of grace. They had the grace of 500 million naira. But hey, guess what? The judge who now handled this case, Justice Rakia Hasrop, said that, guys, where is your employment letter from the police? Bobos no gets, or they couldn't show it in court. Okay, so how do we know that you were actually employed by the police?
Right, in the first place.
So you know what? Because you have failed to, first of all, establish to me that you were actually an employee of the police, this your claim is spurious. It's left to conjecture. How do we know? If you can't establish your your status with the police, how do we even begin to talk about whether you were maltreated or wrongfully dismissed or not?
Yes.
Therefore, by the powers conferred on me by the court, I dismissed the suit. So she dismissed the suit.
Right.
So court rise, exactly. So there are several ways to look at this, right? And for me, this harks back to how a lot of people, this is beyond the story for me. We've heard stories of, this person stole that, this person did this, this person did that, and they take them to court. And this is very rampant with EFCC cases. They get to court and they lose the case on a technicality. Now, Justice Rakia is very right by saying the burden of proof is on the claimant, right? You are the ones who came to say that the police did this and that. Show me your employment records. But I could easily ask her, madam, if you looked at the earlier case, and I'm not a lawyer, so there may be some, obviously there's a technicality to this, but I'm not a lawyer. There was a court case where the police took these guys to court. The police would have said these are our employees who took bribes.
And
so you couldn't
presented their employment letters, the copies that they have.
Even
with
if
them.
they didn't employ, the fact of the police took them to court as policemen who took bribes, isn't that enough to establish their status with the police? How do you now throw out this case based on that technicality? But hey, what do I know? I'm not a learned fellow.
Where's their lawyer, to make this case that you just...
That is another conversation. So let us be sending your messages to WhatsApp 080944400981. Let's take this one here from Bingos. It says all this medicine after death approach to issues in this country is really annoying. These collapses are very preventable if the needful has been done from the outset. It's like concrete does not necessarily need 21 days for curing. Yes, it does. If rapid hardening cement is used, 7 days are enough for curing. He said, our problem in this country still remains corruption. We just love cutting corners in everything we do in this country. And that really buttresses the previous point he made. I mean, if you use, I don't know anything about building, but anyway, I just have...
There are cost considerations. I
have an average for quick measures. But let's go through the next one. Henry Dixon says, I think it's time for government to inaugurate supervisors to carry out check of materials and solidity of buildings in the country. Also, the cost of building materials is one major factor that needs to be considered. Buildings are not using the required materials. God help us.
Yes, that's another aspect. Inferior materials used in building.
Is it the cement or the steel that is inferior?
Just general,
cutting corners.
Cutting corners.
There's one name, right?
Not putting enough cement.
Please don't go there, Justin. Let's look at the punch for the next story now. Demolish defective structures. Still talking and construction. Demolish defective structures or forfeit them. The Lagos State government is warning landlords. And in this story, the Lagos State government on Monday property owners in the state to demolish their properties that have been certified defective or run the risk of forfeiting it to the government. They said in the move to clamp down on building collapses and make sure that doesn't happen again, they've started a drive. They said they started it before the building's recent collapse that we've experienced, that they've identified 149 distressed buildings around Lagos. What are your thoughts on this, Fred?
I think particularly Lagos State is somewhat proactive when it comes to matters like this.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I actually have engaged with the Lasema Rescue Unit, which is their emergency unit. And when I actually went there, I was impressed because the equipment they have for emergencies and all of that. But speaking to the site whoever was in charge there, there was one of the things he stressed. It was like the most of the things that go for like either fire, which is caused by negligence, or just people playing around with like firewood or kerosene or whatever. And then he was saying like buildings that collapse. So when he spoke about buildings that collapse, obviously this was like maybe 6-8 months ago. I was like, what drives this? Like some of it's like really old homes, some of it's the weather. Like if there's a lot of rain, there's particularly we're going to get like a building collapse. And that their problem is that in this case, they can't, that's from the summer group, right? In their case, they're just trying to get there and make sure they rescue people, right? So just all that put together, and this story feeds to the fact that, Lagos State kind of, this approach is basically, trying to prevent this kind of disasters. And the problem is that when you have one of these disasters, changes the whole narrative. Like you don't hear about all the good things that are being done. You just change the narrative. Like even the plane crashes, you don't think about the 10,000 flights that happen and successfully get to places every day.
And over 5,000 flights that go on
exactly.
within a day, just in the United States.
So it's just one just changes the whole narrative. So I will applaud them a bit though. I feel Lagos State is one of the states that and being productive, being proactive. Yeah.
All right.
We want to see less building collapse.
Yes.
Talking
yes.
about buildings, just to answer this question real quick on Twitter, some people have asked this question again and again. Please, guys, who do we report to if we have buildings about to collapse in our areas? So we have the Lagos State Building Control Agency. You can actually also hold the Lagos State government to account. Follow them on Twitter. They're quite responsive. At follow LASG. That's at follow LASG on Twitter for Lagos State government.
All right, let's move on to the next story. Success. That's the name of the girl whose video went viral when she went, she went on, saying that you flog, you tire, Remember that girl?
Yeah.
So her viral video has gotten the attention of the Delta State government, as the Delta State government has suspended a school head and set up a panel to investigate allegations of unauthorized levies that have been collected by the head teacher. They put her on suspension and appointed an acting head teacher of the school. But that measure in itself, is it enough, Justin?
This one I'm particular about because I'm from Delta State.
Okay.
So I'm about to go all shades of gangster on these people.
Just keep it to 1 minute. Your gangster shade.
All right, let's go.
I'm about to go chat on them. Okay. All right. So first things first. This woman is being scapegoated. Right? Mrs. Vero Ibigwe is being scapegoated, if you ask me. You have to understand what's the ground game in the educational sector to understand what I mean by she's being scapegoated. These schools are heavily underfunded. Infrastructurally, for administrative processes, they are basically on their own. They have to make do with what they have, and sometimes they have to do these things that this woman has done. She's not the only one. They are all doing it, right? They all get these kids to pay a token amount so that they can actually keep the school running. Because these people in government take the monies allocated to schools, SUBEB, UBE and co, and do God knows what with it. I attended the primary school when my mom had me. Things in the first few years, things were not really financially straight. So I had to go stay in the village with my grandmother in Ibuzo in Delta State. And our family home is right beside a school. That school we had Liberian teachers. So I didn't really miss much from schooling in Port Harcourt, because we had Liberian and Ghanaian teachers. So two things happened. First of all, we entered into the Ghana madness, and those ones left. And then eventually the Liberians went back home when they sorted themselves out. And then we started the constructive underfunding of education in this country. Administrators in these schools are scrounging to keep schools running. So because Success's video has gone viral, the Delta State government is embarrassed and they are looking for a scapegoat. Look at all the heavyweights that went to that school. I'm overseeing a project in Sapele, incidentally, and I had to do some recruitment late last year. I interviewed over 50 young children. It's a terrible, when I say not young children, 50 young adults who have just left secondary school, right? It's a low-level engagement that we're having. The state of education in the place is terrible, and they should stop making it look like this woman did something wrong. She didn't take the money and put it in her pocket. They are using those monies to run the school. So let's fix the problem and not look for a scapegoat because you guys are embarrassed.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that comment, and we have a response to your analysis.
And Joachim says, well, great analysis on education issues, spot on. And another message very quickly here from Oluwole actually said there are specifications in terms of mortar ratio, beams and pillars sizes, depending on the expected loads occurring, etc. These specifications are most of the time not adhered to, hence building collapse.
All right, I'll come to you, Fred, for our next story, and this is going on to Oyo State, where Ajimobi's last-minute spending worry Oyo Governor-elect Makinde. This report is from the Punch newspaper. Now, he said that the outgoing administration of Governor Abiola Ajimobi is making last-minute withdrawal of funds from the state's treasury ahead of the May 2029 handling over. Please, can you just take us through the story?
Yeah, I actually like the posture that the governor-elect is taking, because obviously it's coming from the private sector, and in the private sector you're basically measured based on performance, right? We kind of really have to have a citizen kind of policing or accountability structure, which I think that's what happened in Delta State. The citizens are reacting, and then in this case, he's obviously a citizen that has access to be able to monitor what's going on. And
well, his income, and he has a stake in it. If
yeah,
they take all the
exactly.
money,
That's
he
what I'm
has
saying.
nothing
Like
to
he has a
work with.
stake in it, and it shows that if he goes in, he understands that he's going to be measured on performance.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
this is kind of showing maybe he's setting up a team that he needs to start running from day one, and that's a kind of governor or elected official kind of mindset I think we should have in
Yes.
general.
Isn't it interesting that just 5 days ago, Makinde visited Abiola Ajimobi, and Ajimobi tweeted it saying, "My friend and brother has come to see me," and people were applauding them for good relationships.
Photo ops.
Photo ops. All right.
Even if it's photo ops, even if it's his friend, he still needs to look after the state that's in this. The citizens are the ones that got him there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for that, Fred. I'll stay with you for this one. We will soon just talk about education now, linking it to what we've just spoken about with regards to what happened in Delta State. We will soon start jailing parents who refuse to enroll children in school. Now, taking it away from state and to the wider, federal government, saying that they will criminalize all those parents who have refused to take their children to school. Fred, this report is in the Daily Times. Please take us through it.
Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking what Justin said, right? We understand that the federal government or the state government have allocated funds in regards to making sure that our children get educated.
Yes.
And that's really the way that we can actually have like a progressive society. And then, so in this case, the Minister of Education is saying that parents can't really hide behind, cultural or religious reasons for not putting their children in school. But I actually not sure how they'll be able to police this actually.
Before we even get to policing, the reasons they've identified, is that sufficient enough? They've identified culture, religion. How about the financial aspect of it?
Thank you.
Because if you're asking people to take their children to school, whereby we understand that basic education is free, as the government keeps on emphasizing, but we see in the case of success, whereby they have other additional levies that they have to pay to keep going. They have to buy school uniform, they have to pay transportation fees, feeding, and this discourages parents, or some parents who are from indigent from taking their children to school.
So let's take a little bit of, I guess, the next level campaign that we saw, right? There were indications that they want to feed children.
Yes.
In this case, he indicates that in the last, they've given more money in 4 years compared to 6 years ago.
School feeding programs do not pay for tuition or do not.
No, so the funding, so there's like
education.
There's 350 billion that is being spent or has been spent by this administration.
Which is a reduction from the previous administration.
No, the previous administration, he said they spent 360 in 6 years. So they're saying, wait now, I'm just trying to, I want to first start his argument for him before we start breaking it down. So we want to believe that with all of this, right?
Yes.
It's like the federal government is going to do their part of the funding and the feeding. So now we can start policing, right?
Okay.
That's kind of what this is trying to indicate.
Yeah, but he didn't say
right?
that. If he had
No,
said
but
that,
it's kind of what he's alluding to,
Right. I like the fact that you're very positive about
No,
it.
I'm not saying what he's
40
alluding to.
people registered for WAEC in which state was that?
Zamfara State.
Okay, let's cascade it down to you will have first of all, you reduce the voter population in the north because a lot of the parents who should be voting will be in jail if you're actually going to do this and you're not just talking. That's all I have
Because
to say.
looking at it, perhaps there should be a community-based approach to encouraging parents to taking their children to school, because it goes beyond just religion.
First of all, provide
That's
the
what I'm
schools.
saying.
You can't tell me
Provide
to
the
send my
schools.
child to sit under a tree and call it a school.
or schools that are not safe.
Guys, out of 262 million children out of school children in the world, a majority of them, totaling 13.2 million, are in Nigeria alone.
Come on.
We have the highest.
Someone come here, you want to
The
arrest
government
parents.
is not
Arrest
failing in
parents what?
education. I don't know what else speaks of that.
All right, let's
other
take
than
your
this.
comments. We have a few comments coming in from Success's story and also from the story about education.
Benga Joel says, I saw Success's school and was shocked at the deplorable condition of that school. Delta State is supposed to be an oil-producing state with 14% derivation and several interventions. What do they do with these resources? Some people will deceive themselves by calling for restructuring as the solution to this problem. If we do not deal with corruption, nothing will work for us.
They threw a party for an ex-con who got back from a jail in London. Go figure.
Big T says, on building collapse, it's symbolic in Nigeria. Corruption leads to inferior materials like cement, rods, electric wires, etc. Corruption leads to regulatory bodies not doing their jobs. How can you mark a building twice and yet not pull it down? Corruption leads to contractors cutting corners for profit. The problem? Corruption.
All right. Okay, Big T, thank you very much for that one. We'll go on to this story. Justin, I'll come to you for this. Governorship election, Army rejects INEC's report on rivers. Now, when you read this headline, you think they were talking about the fact that the Army, talking about the militarization of the elections, but it's not anything about it. It's interesting to read the details of this story. Can you please take us through it, Justin?
So there was two fighting at the gate of the collation center.
Justin, this thing is not funny that you're saying. When I was reading it, it was shocking.
Look, Ayo, I don't have money for high BP medicine, okay? So I will water it down. So guys, here's what happened. There was, like I said, two fighting at the gate of the collation center in Rivers State. And inside the ruffle, two army guys were shot by policemen. Or one was shot, and I heard a machete was used on the second person. So you have two army guys in hospital. Background to the story. So I think yesterday or on Friday, there was supposed to be a parley between the army and the police. Now, Nigerians, we all know that whenever the police and the army get into fisticuffs, things happen, right? Sometimes they bring it to the streets, and you hear that they invaded one camp and they beat people. So they didn't want that to happen. Well, back in the years, it used to happen. So anyway, they wanted to manage the optics because this plays into the whole narrative about what happened during our elections, right? So there was supposed to be a joint press conference between the police and the army. I think either on Friday or yesterday. At the last minute, someone realized that no, this is bad for optics. They can't be issuing joint press conference addressing this kind of issue. So they pulled the plug on it. Now, while the army was all riled up and being held in check by all of this, by a promise that, look, we'll address it, you guys just don't react. INEC now comes out and says, look, this is our report and this is what happened. And the army is furious about, hey, our guys are hospitalized and you guys are making it look like we're the ones looking for trouble.
You failed to mention whose police aides are responsible for this according to the report.
Okay. They say it's Governor Wike. They say...
Yes, so according to this report, the aides attached to Governor Wike were the ones who actually perpetrated this assault on the army officials.
But I have $1 million question. What was the army doing at the collation center? They were not on election duty. Elephant in the room.
Well, the army did say they were going to deploy some of their officials to
INEC is the owner of the elections.
Right? Not within the polling units.
All right.
So what really happened on the ground was, I grew up in Port Harcourt, so army guys came to the gate of the collation center where the police were officially posted and by INEC and took charge of the gate so that they could control who entered and who went out. And the police guy said, no, you're not going to do that. And in all of that, people got shot. So shame, that's all I have to say, shame. Right. And listen to the last statement of the army guy. So they are demanding that, first of all, they've rejected INEC's report. This is why the army should stay out of politics, really. This is bad optics for the army. They've rejected the report and they're saying that they are disappointed in the attitude exhibited by the Nigerian police and by INEC, who they usually deploy their resources to help.
But recall, Justin, sorry to cut you short, but recall that before the elections, before the process, the days of the election, we had joint efforts or conferences held, communication between security personnel.
Yeah, there's usually coordination.
There's a
in this particular instance, of what happened at the collation center, it wasn't supposed to be a joint responsibility.
It wasn't collaborative. Okay, Justin, unfortunately, I have to stop you there because we need to go to our last story with Fred. Now, Fred, this one, Onnoghen, still an update on Onnoghen's case. Onnoghen accuses federal government of mutilating his assets declaration form. This is from the Thisday newspaper. Can you take us through this, please?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting just going through the article, and so the council actually says after seeing the documents that was presented at court, they noticed that first of all there's some documents missing, and they claim that what the former Chief Justice had indicated on his forms had been tampered with, obviously, and that's kind of changes the whole if it's coming from that position for his defense, that kind of changes the whole
But it's still an
narrative.
accusation. It hasn't yet been substantiated.
Yes.
He has still just said
Yes.
it's been done.
And
They
then,
don't have to prove it.
yeah, another thing that came to light was just when the investigation was actually completed and when it was reported that it was actually completed. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things happening here.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take a few comments before we wrap up the show this morning.
This one on YouTube from Namdi Amos, it says, "It now looks like the federal government spends more on feeding the students than the education itself. Are we not shocking ourselves the more?" He asks. And then
That's part of the education.
I know. Well, Samson on Twitter says,
Food
"We
and
say
water
everything is
filter.
corruption, but this LASCA officials are poorly paid. So any developer or landlord can offer them peanuts. The demolition mark will be ignored. Lots of people should be held accountable, and sometimes it's painted over. Let's be honest."
Yeah.
Yinka here says, well, long message. It says, "When I hear things like free education and later we're asked to pay PTA levy, this levy that levy this." I wonder what's free in education. In fact, our left legs sandals were collected when we do not pay on time. Flogging in some cases too. So I say, shout out to Babani back then at Festac Grammar School. But finally, we're all right last. But for a state that gets 13% derivation along with its allocation, there's need for some explanation.
All right, thank you, Yinka, and everyone who sent in their messages. We'll read some of your messages on Lagos Talks 981, depending on the topic we choose for that.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much for tuning in. Also, for those on YouTube, thank you for your messages. Thank you to our analysts. Thank you, Fred. You can follow Fred at Mr. FB Allison. You can follow Justin Ijeh at Justin Ijeh on Twitter. You can follow us at Smooth 981 FM for more updates and also to share your thoughts with us. We'll be back at 8:15 for the Grapevine with some guests in studio.